Lift up and stretch out your hands, not to heaven, but to the poor. For if you stretch forth your hands to the poor, you have reached the summit of heaven. But if you lift up your hands in prayer without sharing with the poor, it is worth nothing. St. John Chrysostom. Makes you think. Makes you think. Now, I've covered this before, but when it comes to the poor, there's obviously poorness in wealth, or poorness in spirituality, and poorness when it comes to, the spirituality is kind of a catch-all term. Poorness in faith and belief, and poorness in wealth. To us, as Orthodox Christians, and as Christians almost in general, we see that person's belief and strength in their spiritual worth, rather than the money or the wealth that they do have. Now, is it important to be thankful to God for things that the wealth that is created and that he is able to provide? Yes. And unfortunate circumstances happen to people all the time. And then unfortunate things happen to in life. I mean, it's just one of those things, and you're either going to be rich or poor from it, but it's more so on the faith and the belief. And the act of lifting up and stretching out your hands to the poor, that is reaching the summit of heaven. So the poor, like the Bible verse, the poor are going to be returned to God, because they are the most humble within God's grace, because of the fact they do not boast. They do not care about the worldly things, for they're shedding almost all material possessions and returning to a state of grace, to something that they can see God more fervently and more realistically, which is incomprehensible, but in a sense, it's getting into that sense of prayer. And if you share it without the poor, it is worth nothing. So the spiritually poor, the faithful that are poor, both in the money sense and in the sense of their soul, their spirit, that is not only enriching your life as a Christian, and in particular as Orthodox Christians, we take that sense of spirit, that sense of faith and belief very seriously, and having a ethos for it, and that creating that sense of, it helps create a sense of community and creates a bond that is going to be worth something, and it's not going to just be spiritually poor people striving for something that is outside of what could be heavenly, or what could be worth sharing with others. And a lot of charismatic and evangelical Christianity comes to mind with reading this as well, because a lot of that just stems from materialism and giving grace to God and glory to God that way. However, that's not the point. It's not the point of the Eucharistic gifts from God, which our spirit is fulfilled, and how we don't become spiritually poor, and then sharing that with others and being in communion with him as well, that is definitely one of those things where we gain traction with, and we gain the grace of God for it being something more, and by meaning the summit of heaven, that is where you do lift up your hands and you can stretch out your hands to the poor that are around you and help them. And then to say it is worth nothing, your actions have to definitely coincide with those things. So I mean, it's one of those things where heaven is vindicated for somebody who is internally struggling, whether it be through wealth or through faith and belief. So, therefore, it's one of those things where I see the charismatic and evangelical movements as easy targets, and those are just easy things to not only criticize, but to have proof of that material world, because obviously it's all around us and it's something we have a concrete knowledge of. And then going further is something that he said about the summit of heaven. Obviously, we can't comprehend that. There is no comprehension of that. And with that being said, those are the things that I believe that, the evangelical and the charismatic want to replace with material possessions. They want to replace it with worldly wealth. Maybe that's a better way of just describing that in general. So it's just those things that then replace themselves and take it to those heights which aren't to be recognized because of the precedents that the church fathers like St. John Chrysostom have set. make way and make do for those things, for actually kind of being a development of the faith and what the church fathers presupposed and what they granted as spiritual law and spiritual well-being, with the West diluting a lot of what they said and boiling it down to the material world around us. And yeah, that is definitely something to also take in mind and to definitely think about, because those kind of things are just going to not only prevent you from lifting up and stretching out your hands not only to heaven but to the poor, and it's going to make your struggle as an individual that much more resonant, not with God, because God knows already, but it's going to take away from the struggle that you could be facing, and not having God answer for it. You're just looking for it in material things, and you're not looking for it in a transcendence and an already presupposed thing worth something. It's going to be worth something then. So it's not only helping out the poor that are around you, both in the worldly wealth sense and the faith and belief sense, it's also helping yourself to emanate and be able to navigate those things and not have the material world answer for it.